Good morning, I'm Velvet with Quality Sewing and Vacuum, and I'm an educator here at our locations in the Pacific Northwest, and thank you for joining me for How Do I? So today I'm going to be talking to you all about decorative stitches. So here I have some different varieties of decorative stitches, and any of these can be stitched in any way that you like. So you can add decorative stitches to garments along the hem, you can add them to bags on the handles or around the top. They can be put on decorative things like pillows or home decor projects, or really anything you can think of. Decorative stitches are just a great way to add a little bit of texture and appeal to a project. So let's go over these different styles of decorative stitches that I have here. So this first type is called an open decorative stitch. So these are characterized by a single or a double stitch. And all of these are kind of open style designs. And there's a lot of different options that you can get with an open decorative stitch, like little trees or hearts, or even some of these more ornate things over here, like these snowflakes. Now for the next style we have, this is called a satin stitch. And a satin stitch is really just a zigzag that's been smushed together super close to create a really bolded design. Now some of these are just kind of random shapes and styles, and others have specific purposes, like the scalloped edge satin stitch that we have here. This is actually stitched along the edge of your fabric, and then you use your scissors to cut away the excess, and you're left with this really pretty scallop design. And the last style of decorative stitch that we have here is called an heirloom or a hem stitch. Now these are traditionally done by hand, but we now have the ability to do them on our sewing machines to make it a lot faster and easier for us. Now these require a couple different things to be able to get the correct look for an heirloom stitch. Number one is you're going to be stitching these on a lighter weight fabric, like a light cotton like this. You're also going to use a lighter weight thread, which we'll talk more about thread here in just a moment. And then you can also use what's called a wing needle. And a wing needle is a little bit different than a standard sewing machine needle. It actually has two little metal wings on either side of our needle that help to push the fibers apart to create a hole, giving it that really distinctive lace look. All right, so let's talk about what kind of tools that we need to make sure that our decorative stitches turn out exactly the way that we want them to do. So first off is going to be thread for our decorative stitches. So you can use a variety of different types of thread, but they look really beautiful with lighter weight threads. So the weight of the thread actually refers to the thickness of the strand, not how much it actually weighs. So a standard weight thread for most of your sewing is about a 40 to a 50 weight thread. But for decorative stitching like these, our lighter weight threads tend to work a little bit better. So anywhere from like a 60 to an 80 weight is going to be a great option. So this one here is a standard 40 weight polyester. And this looks really good with our satin stitches because they are a little bit thicker. So they do benefit from that thicker thread. You can also use things like your embroidery thread, which has a really nice shine to it. So it gives a really pretty look to your decorative stitches. This is also a 40 weight. Or you can use things like variegated thread, which can give a really fun look to those decorative stitches as well. Or even a metallic thread, which can add some sparkle to it. But for things like your open designs here or your heirloom stitches, you're better off using a little bit of a lighter thread like that 60 to 80 weight to get a better appearance. Regardless of what type of thread or design that you choose to use on your project, it's essential to make sure that you're doing a test version first to ensure that it's going to stitch correctly on your real project. So our next piece of our decorative stitching that's going to help make these look beautiful is going to be stabilizer. So I have 4 different options here I'll talk about with stabilizer. The first one we have here is a tearaway. So this rips away from the back of your project when you're finished. This option is better to use for medium or heavyweight fabrics, as it can withstand being torn away from the back. If you use this on something a little lighter weight, it's significantly more difficult to pull this away from the stitches, as they can end up distorting them or tearing at them. Your next option, which is my personal favorite, is a water-soluble or a wash-away stabilizer. So with this option, it is made of starch and it rinses away with warm water. So the best way to get rid of it is to soak your project in a bowl of warm water once you are finished stitching on it. And then once it's been sitting for a few hours, you can rinse away the rest and you are left with your beautiful decorative stitches. My next two options here, we have a interfacing. So interfacing is an option that you can use that will stay in your project permanently. And this is really good for things like garments in both the cuffs or the collars of a shirt. Also really good in bag making, like the handles, or to provide a little bit more structure. And this intends to stay in the project forever. So with my little samples that I made here, I ironed a piece of my fusible interfacing on the back of it, and then I stitched on the front, and that can stay in there to give it the stability that it needs. Our last option is starch. So starch can give those lightweight fabrics a little bit more body to help withstand those dense stitches. That being said, starch is not going to be the only option you want to use. Starch is to be used in hand with one of these other options, as this typically is not going to be enough to give the fabric support, especially when stitching something really dense like a satin stitch. And our last things that are going to be super helpful with our decorative stitching is marking tools. So I love ones that go away with the iron, like our friction pens here. And I also love these options that go away with water. So this is a great way to use that water-soluble stabilizer in hand with our water disappearing marking tools. But these are essential if you want to make sure that your stitches are going to stitch out correctly for you, so everything looks nice and straight and even and stitches exactly where you would like. So let's move over to my little samples here that I've already drawn on. So I have two pieces of cotton fabric here that I've placed some water-soluble stabilizer behind, and I've already drawn some lines on here using a marking tool that we're going to follow. So coming over to my machine here, I already have all of our stitches pulled up on my machine. So these menus here at the top, 1 through 5, they are shown in blue here. These are going to be your standard stitches that you cannot combine with each other to make new ones. The ones below it, 6 through 10, are going to be the decorative stitch options you can use that you can combine together, which I'll show you how to do that here in just a few minutes as well. So I'm going to start by choosing a stitch that I want to use. We're going to go into menu 6, and I'm going to scroll over to the stitch I'm looking for. We're going to use 6-30 today. Another very important thing to remember with decorative stitching is it's usually going to ask you to use a different presser foot. So in this case, our brother model that we're using here asks us to use our N foot, which is our decorative stitch foot. So I've already gone ahead and pulled out my decorative stitch foot here. And the reason this is a little different than your standard stitch foot is it has the widest space available for you to do the widest possible stitch. It has a clear opening here in the middle to make it easy to see your stitches. And the back has this little indented guide here that help guide the fabric through so you get a really beautiful stitch. So we're going to go ahead and attach this. And now I'm going to place my fabric with my stabilizer underneath it, underneath my presser foot. And what I'm doing here is no matter where the needle starts on my fabric, because it might start in a different position depending on what decorative stitch that you use, I am actually lining up my line with the center of the presser foot. So in the middle of the presser foot here, there's a little gap, and that is going to mark my center. So once I'm in place, I'm going to put my presser foot down. Also, feel free to put your needle right down in your fabric as well. So on this model here, I have my up-down needle button, but if you don't have a button for it, you can always use the hand wheel over here on the side of the machine. So I'm going to go ahead and start stitching. Now, as you can see that when I'm stitching this, I am not pushing or pulling my fabric through. The machine is doing all the work for me. All I'm doing is I'm watching my guide right here in the middle to make sure it stays in the center of my foot so it stitches exactly where I want it to. It's essential to make sure that you're not pushing or pulling, otherwise it can end up distorting the stitches. So once I'm ready to be finished with my decorative stitching, I want to get to the very last stitch that I am working on here, and I'm going to press this button here on the front of the machine. So this is a stitch completion button, and when I press this, a green light will turn on, and it will tell the machine that I want it to complete the decorative stitch that it's currently working on and then stop. Perfect. All right, so now that it's finished, I can go ahead and remove my fabric. I'm going to press my scissor button here on the front, which will automatically cut my threads. But if you don't have this feature, you'll lift your needle, pull your fabric out, and cut your tails. And there is my decorative stitch. So another really cool feature is our pivot function, which can help make decorative stitching on angles very, very easy. So I'm going to grab my other sample here. Now on this one, I have drawn an angle here. So I'm not going to start all the way up here for time's sake. I'm going to start a little bit further down. And then once I get to this point, I will show you how to pivot. So on the front of our machine, we actually have a button right here. This is our pivot function. And what this does is when I stop sewing, the needle is going to stay down in the fabric and the presser foot will come up, making it very easy for me to turn my fabric whatever direction I need to. So I'm going to leave that feature on here. Go ahead and place my fabric back underneath, start stitching. And I'm going to select that button there to finish it off. Okay, the needle will stay down and the presser foot will come up. If you do not have this feature on your machine, that's okay. You can always use your hand wheel to put the needle down in your fabric and then lift your presser foot up manually to then turn your fabric. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn it so I can line up my next line. Press that stitch completion, and I can press my scissors to cut and finish it off. And here we have an angle. Our next really cool feature that we have available to us on this machine, and maybe even your model, is that we can actually combine some of these stitches to create new ones. So I'm going to go back to our main home menu here. And I'm going to choose a different stitch. So let's go back into, a menu where we got more options. Let's go to 6 here. And I'm gonna find something I want to work with. So let's use this cool swirly one. So now I want to combine this with another stitch. To do that, I'm gonna press my little orange menu down here in the far right-hand corner. And then I'm going to choose this button here where it shows these little stars. I want to make sure that it's selected as one star, because what that's going to do is it's going to show only one portion of my stitch sequence here on the side. So now I'm going to close that menu by pressing that same button again, and I'm going to choose another stitch to add to it. So let's go ahead and add this little star, and maybe I'll scroll over and find something else here, maybe this little flower. And then let's see, maybe this little swirly. Okay, so now that I have those selected, I'm gonna go ahead and put my fabric underneath and I'm gonna start stitching. Now, because I'm still on that one star option in this menu down here, it is only going to stitch the 4 stitches that I picked. If I want it to make a sequence where it continues stitching this over and over and over again, then I have to choose the same star button again to go on to 3 stars. And then it makes a continuous sequence. So let's go ahead and start stitching. Another thing to keep in mind with our decorative stitches is they typically take a little bit longer to stitch than your standard stitches do. So now that it's getting back towards the beginning of the stitches again, I'm going to go ahead and press that stitch completion. It's going to finish off what it's working on. And it will tie it off. So now I'll press my scissors again, pull it out, and then there is my sequence of decorative stitches I've created. So I can also save this as well. So if I decide that I want to use this on another project at a later time, I can save it right to my machine. So what you'll do is down in this same little orange menu we've been working with, we're going to press that again. I'm going to choose the little picture here with the pocket, with the arrow going in it. Then I'm going to choose how I want to save it. You can either save it directly to the machine or to a USB stick. It's usually easiest to just save it right to your machine. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. Now, let's say I'm starting from scratch and I'm ready to go ahead and pull that stitch back up. So here back on my main menu, I'm going to choose the pocket down at the bottom. I'm going to choose my machine because that's where I saved it. And there is the stitch that I've created. So now all I need to do is press set and I'm ready to go ahead and start stitching it again. The last thing I want to show you is some lettering. So you also have some decorative lettering options as well in your machine. So let's go ahead and delete everything that we're working on here. Now back to our home page here, we have a stitch menu for letters, and we have a bunch of different styles to choose from. Some of them are going to stitch out better than others, and that's why it's also really important to make sure that you're testing them first. So let's go ahead and just choose this standard style here, and we're just going to type in A, B, C, D, easy peasy, and then I'm going to go ahead and start stitching that. Let's do it on the end of this line here, since I've only got 2 lines that I drew. Now with this, because I did not tell it to use that 3-star function, just the 2 or just the 1, this is only going to stitch exactly what I wrote out. So just the A, B, C, and D. Now it does that tie off, and we can go ahead and press the scissors. And there we have some lettering. So you can also take your scissors after the lettering has been finished, and you can cut these little tails off that are in between there too. So really quick, I'd like to show you what the difference is between sewing with a stabilizer versus without. So let's go ahead and just peel this stabilizer away from the back of this. And let's stitch these same letters just on this piece of fabric here. All right. So this is what our lettering would look like had we not used that stabilizer on there. You can see how it's a little bit more puckered. It pulls a lot more on the back. It's not quite as nice looking, but with our stabilizer, it keeps everything really beautiful and flat, and you get a much better quality stitch. All right. Do we have any questions for me to answer this morning? Alrighty, sounds great. Okay, well, thank you all so very much for joining me this morning. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, any other social media you may have, and feel free to join us next week for another segment of How Do I?